Thanks so much for joining me. Usually it's Max up here with me, and we talk about lots of changes to the T CLI, T GUI, um, new stuff in open source. But today I thought we'll change it up a bit and talk about what has changed in basically 1 year. I mean, I know it's been a bit more than a year since the white paper was released, but let's call it a year. Um, in everything related to the T protocol. Um, and yeah, maybe you can introduce yourselves, and then we'll just like do it usually with Max. He's like continuously, he can talk really well by himself. But I've got some questions queued as well. But yeah, I'll leave it to you, Thomas.
All right, cool. Thank you. Well, hello everyone. Pleasure to meet you virtually today. So I'm Thomas. I'm focused on the blockchain part of T. So to perhaps I should start with a little bit of an introduction. So from background, I've been doing product management for about 20 years or so. I started in the telecoms and networking industry way back when. My journey with blockchain started in 2017. At the time, I was working for a networking company, and we were looking to solve some licensing issues at scale for a very, very large client, and we were envisioning using blockchain for that. As I started digging into it, I got really excited about the potential, and I ended up quitting that job and joining a project based here in Toronto called Polymath. So Polymath is focused on security tokens, so essentially transforming capital markets by putting securities on the blockchain. And so started with them in early 2018. Built a solution on Ethereum, and then ended up looking at some of the challenges that Ethereum was posing for what we were looking to accomplish, and decided to build a custom layer one called Polymesh, which is now live. It's been live since November of 2022, and so sorry, 2021, and so the purpose there was, building a custom settlement system that would really fit the use cases for securities. So I spent about 4 years doing that. Then I left to go work for, when the chain launched, I left to go work for a regulated crypto brokerage. Stayed there for some time, and then it was a bit too removed from the chain for my liking. So I ended up leaving and going back to another project focused on travel rule for exchanges and custodians. And so what that is specifically, or the business problem we were looking to solve was, how can we, in an environment where counterparties do not trust each other, build a system that will allow them to share information around their client as is required by regulation. So when someone sends a transaction of over $1,000 in specific jurisdictions, then there needs to be a disclosure between the two exchanges around who are the counterparties in that transaction. So that was built using an Ethereum proof of chain blockchain. So I stayed there for some time, and then joined T last year, starting with working on the white paper that came out. I think it was April or May of 2022. Spent some time, doing research and writing the white paper in close collaboration with other members of the team, Josh and a few others that are named actually in the paper as well. And now we're at the stage where we've done significant amount of due diligence, and we're ready to build. So we've started growing the team. bringing some developers to help with the different components of the protocol, which are around, how do you assign a score, an impact score, to each specific package within the global open source ecosystem, and have that impact score be relevant relative to all the other participants there, so all the other packages in the pool. And how do you then distribute rewards to those different packages and create the right incentives for developers to continue to build, for developers to fix their own bugs, as well as contribute more code. Okay. So that's a bit of an introduction. In terms of those components that I talked about, so one of those components is something internally we refer to as T-Rank. And so what T-Rank does is it looks at data from a variety of package managers, and as you know, if you dig into the different package managers, you quickly get to 10 million plus packages being stored there. So it looks at all the packages within and across package managers and uses an algorithm that the team has put together. Brilliant team that has done extensive analysis, extensive data analysis and research and evaluation and experimentation to tune that algorithm. But it pushes all this data through an algorithm to give every package a score that is a representation of its impact across the entire open source ecosystem. And that score is what's then going to be used to drive the rewards that get distributed to the packages across all the registered packages on the T graph. So T-Rank builds the T-graph and assigns a weight to each package, so that there's a fair and equitable distribution, automatic distribution of rewards across all of them. Mark, I don't know if there's any questions specifically on this that you'd want us to cover. Otherwise, I'm happy to continue there.
Yeah, maybe I think that's a good point to ask also the audience to either, I don't think there's a raise hand feature here, but you can either leave some questions in the chat, or just unmute yourself and ask a question. We're all among friends here, so if you feel confident enough to ask a question, go ahead, please. I guess there's one question here from Pierrick. How often is this score updated?
So the score is updated daily. And it's updated daily based on new packages being released, but also new packages being onboarded. So the goal from a distribution perspective is to have a daily distribution, and that each daily distribution to use the data from fresh data from T-Rank. As you know, right, each blockchain operates with its own time zone. So don't think of it as like midnight to midnight. It's going to be based on block numbers and so on. But 24 hours is the right way to describe it, in my opinion. Any other questions on this particularly? Okay. All right, cool.
I think not so far.
So, with this, then, what other areas have we been working on? So that the status of the algorithm is it's built. We actually have the the authors of the algorithm have put together a technical paper that is currently being reviewed internally. And so our goal is will be to distribute that paper to everyone, probably something that will occur during the summer or towards the latter part of the summer. Distribute that to everyone in the community to solicit your input, and particularly start attacking the system, right? So are there ways that you could maximize rewards by minimize the work? And so if so, how would you essentially trick the T-rank algorithm to do that? So we're going to be publishing a paper on this, and what we'll do as well later in the year is roll out the algorithm on a testnet for the same purpose. Like how would you trick the system to get that maximum rewards with minimal amount of effort? The goal there being to bulletproof the algorithm in preparation for our mainnet launch. So that activity has taken a substantial amount of effort, as you can imagine. If you look at the top 30 package managers out there, you're looking at more than 10 million packages. If you look at the top 6 or 7, you're looking at 5.5 million packages. NPM alone is over 4 million packages. So if you think about grabbing this data and computing it on a 24-hour cycle to get that fair and equitable distribution of rewards, that's quite intensive. That's quite intense. And so obviously there's a lot of effort that has gone into tuning the algorithm, but also tuning the implementation of the algorithm, so we don't end up having to throw quantum computing at the problem to get the data up to date on a 24-hour basis. So massive lift from the team there. The second activities that have taken place is, well, let's assume that we have T-rank now. We have all this data. How are packages going to be onboarded? How are package maintainers, developers, participants in the network going to be onboarded? How can we create the most frictionless experience for all the different network participants? And so there's luckily there's a lot of progress that was made in the last few months with that. You look at account abstraction, for example, or EIP 4337, that has brought some very significant benefits or very significant opportunities to create that frictionless onboarding. And so we're definitely looking to draw some inspiration from there to effectively make the chain invisible. The chain is that mechanism that is used to do the token distribution, make sure that there's all sorts of tools around vulnerability disclosure, around supporting particular projects. All those tools are available 24/7, transparent, and censorship resistant. So that's the purpose of the chain. But how can we make it so a chain is completely abstracted, and that as a developer, I interact mostly with the tools I've always interacted with. I just have a new source of revenue, this new source of income that comes from having registered my package and continuously maintained that package, so that all the users of it have continued to use it. Okay, so that's sort of a second area that we focused on, which was how can we build that user experience. So we've designed a bunch of flows, reviewed these flows with a smart contract developer. That person recently joined the team, and so now we're in prototyping phase for this. Let's start building these flows. Let's start mocking up those experiences. Make sure that account abstraction really gives us what we need, and do we have the tools that we need to really deliver on that? Can we utilize pre-existing code, the likes of a Gnosis Safe, for example, build some extension modules potentially there to build that seamless experience. A third work stream has been, well, we have all these different tools that we need. Each package is going to need a treasury. Each developer is going to need to be onboarded. We're going to need contracts to do the T-Rank distribution on chain. We're going to need contracts to do steeping of packages. So where are all these contracts going to run? Which base layer should we pick to do that? Do we want to launch our own layer one? If so, which stack should we use? Do we want to use an existing layer one? If so, which one should we use? Do we want to go into a layer two or go into something like a SuperNet or something like that? And so there's been quite a bit of analysis that has been done there, particularly considering the progress that we've seen in the last sort of 12, 18 months to look at a short list of base stack that could be built upon. And so that short list is now complete, and we're effectively experimenting using the stacks on that short list to see which one can deliver the best performance and scalability that a project like T is going to need. If you think about it, 5.5 million packages with the top 6 or 7 package managers, 10, 11 million with the top 28. When everyone's onboarded with T, which granted would take some time, but let's fast forward to that just to get a sense of scale, right? Some of those packages can have anywhere between 1-2 developers to hundreds or thousands of developers. 10 million packages, even if they each have an average of, let's say, 10 developers, you're looking at 10 million accounts for the 10 million packages, plus another 100 million accounts for the maintainers that manage those 10 million packages. So that's 110 million accounts. And those 10 million package accounts are going to need to get daily distribution, of rewards. So you're looking at distributing to 10 million accounts on a 24-hour rolling cycle based on data that needs to be computed right away. And so how can we pick the right infrastructure to get to that scale? But also, how can we pick the right infrastructure to create an incentive for all members of the community to look at what the team has built and say, well, I like that, but I can do better. Or I think there's an opportunity there that you guys haven't seen. I'm going to go build a product on top of T that will further open source, that will allow new and innovative ways to fund open source or build open source. And we obviously want to make sure that we pick the best stack to foster that engagement from all of you in the community, so that the protocol continues to have has a life of its own and continues to evolve in a distributed and decentralized way. So I'll take a pause there because I've been rambling for a few minutes. But any questions so far?
Yeah, so there was one question from Vlad asking how the continuously updating and supporting
that's a great
of a
question.
package is measured.
We essentially query information from the different package managers to try and understand dependencies. So, and you'll get more details in the T-Rank paper, but I'll just give you sort of a high level for now, okay? So the way T-Rank functions, it's a significant evolution of PageRank. So we're looking at links between the packages, dependencies, on the basis that the more dependent a package has, the more important it is to the ecosystem. And so this is where reading information from the package managers, or reading that information from the package managers, informs the impact that each package has in the ecosystem overall. We had to make some significant changes to PageRank to address the spamming risks that are unique to what we're doing at T, right? Obviously, PageRank was designed originally for web pages, not for packages. Structurally, it is fantastic, and it provided a good base, but it needed to be significantly evolved to address the needs of package of like package ranking, if you will. And so we get that information from the package managers on a regular basis, on a daily basis, and compute that with the T-Rank algorithm to say, well, package foo had 20,000 dependent yesterday. Now it has 21,000 dependents. So let's use some of the historical value, let's use the new value, and compute all of that into a T-Rank for foo for today. And that's what is going to be used to distribute T-Rank rewards to foo today. All right, does that make sense, Bud? Cool, awesome. Awesome. I see Pierrick also had a question on rewards could accrue in a kind of staking contract, and then developers can claim their portion of the rewards at any time. So there is a staking component. So at T, we refer to that as steeping, as you've seen in the paper. And in a moment, I'll cover some of the high-level differences between what we had in the paper and what we are looking to build. There's a few changes there that I'll cover, but going back to your question, Pierrick, around staking or steeping, yes, there is a notion of steeping within T, which is essentially over and above the impact that a package has. Then we wanted to look at some form of reputation. So as a developer, sorry, if you're not talking, would you mind muting? Let's see. Okay, cool. Sorry, I was getting some background noise. I don't know if you guys are getting it too. So back on the question of steeping. So as a developer, I want to build a new package, and I'm going to utilize some of the tools that already exist out there to do this. So I'm going to have my own set of dependencies. There's a very high likelihood that I'm going to look at the code of those dependencies. Like before I jump with both feet in utilizing that dependency, I want to make sure that the code is going to do what I want it to do, that it doesn't have any or introduce any potential risk to my own product. And so in doing so, I'll review the code, and I can steep tokens to that package to say, I've actually reviewed the code. I really like that code. I'll be using it, but effectively improving the reputation of that particular package by having more and more users steeping with the underlying expectation that you've actually looked at the code and you know that it is sound, it's secure, and it's effective code. And because you're steeping, you're effectively improving the security of the software supply chain by having done that review and by bonding a particular amount of T tokens to your review, and you get rewards as a result for that. So Pierrick, I hope that answered your question. So it's essentially the staking or steeping runs parallel to the T-Rank distribution. Yeah, and for the rewards distribution, as it stands right now, right, to your point, that there's a potential of having to send millions of transactions on a regular basis. And so for this, the approach that we're considering there is using more of a Merkle-based distributor there, so that you don't end up, sending 100,000 tokens and paying 200,000 tokens in gas, right? Because then what's the point? It's I'm sure we will all feel way much better to get those tokens distributed to the builders, the ones that are continuing to improve and propel the usage of open source, as opposed to just paying gas. Like, gas is great. We need the infrastructure to be paid for, but within reason. Okay. So, just yep.
There was one more question about there's so much information about, and so much interesting information. Andre asked that just above, if there's a possibility of an article about that. And yes, we'll have that T-rank paper coming out, and then obviously this is a much bigger paper, and we will break this up into more digestible
the
content.
State of this T-rank paper now is
form of a blog post.
It's being reviewed internally. We're also running a bunch of simulations. We want to make sure that we put those simulations, like the output of those simulations, in there, so that you get not only the math but also the output of the math, and you can get a feel for what the T-rank output is going to be. But yes, definitely our goal is to publish that. And I'd be the first to acknowledge that, from a protocol perspective, we need to do a better job at updating everybody on our progress and what we've been working on. As you can imagine, the last few months, to get to the point we're at right now, the last few months has been, everyone heads down, let's go, and put some code together and think about that user experience and evaluate and run simulations and so on. So it's been very very intense. But as time goes on, we'll do a much better job at communicating that progress. And I think, to temper some of that, we want to make sure that we have something meaningful to communicate when we do. And so having the T-rank blog post, having all the simulations, having the research done on the base stacks, and how we could do account abstraction, for example, if we're going down that path, or how we could do that invisible blockchain. I consume its value without actually seeing it. As we get, we felt it would be much better to have answers to that and then communicate those answers, as opposed to restricting ourselves to more questions than answers. All right. So, yeah, go ahead.
I have a question, I guess, or if you have something. Yeah, you touched on it just before, but many of the open source maintainers of the projects that will onboard on the protocol, they might not be extremely familiar with handling private keys, with managing a wallet. How do you have some ideas, or how do you envision kind of like that whole part of the onboarding process?
Right? So with account abstraction, you can do things like social recovery, for example. But what it does, what account abstraction does is, instead of having what is often referred to as an EOA, an externally owned address, so that's your ledger, that's your Trezor, that's your Keep key, that's your MetaMask. It turns every account into a smart contract. And as a result, it enables new pieces of functionality. There's several of them that are very, very interesting in the context of 4337. One is that ability to do social recovery. So now I create my account, I can back up just a file, and that file will allow me to restore my account. I don't need to safeguard a 24-word seed phrase. I can safeguard that file. I can do social recovery, so my friends can help me recover my account if I lose it. All my transactions also go through an alternative mempool, and transactions that come out of that alternative mempool get submitted to the chain, but you can make use of what is referred to as a paymaster. So I can have someone else pay gas for me. So what that means in practice is I want to make an action, I click a button, and that action happens. I click the button, then that button pops open my wallet. I log into my wallet, review the transaction in the wallet, click approve in the wallet, maybe re-enter my password in the wallet, and then the transaction is submitted. So it significantly streamlines the experience, because behind the scene, well, the paymaster potentially paid gas for that specific transaction. And so I didn't have to pop my wallet open and approve that transaction. So it makes for a much smoother experience. Yeah, that's one example. Yeah, I see Tom's raising his hand.
Sure. I would like to ask about what about the scenario when the maintainer of some intermediate package would like not to be onboarded onto the
first
system?
Of all, the onboarding
would that block their dependencies from being rewarded?
Every package maintainer will onboard their own package. They need to take the action themselves. Now, there's the issue of the dependencies. So the way we're currently thinking about the protocol is that all the rewards that I get, a portion of those rewards go to my dependencies. That's the principle of T, right? The rewards don't just go to the top package, they flow down the tree. If a dependency that I have is not registered, then the portion that would have gone to that dependency gets burnt. Does that answer your question, Tom?
Okay, so yeah, sure. So let's say I totally get that, but I'm wondering, and at the same time being worried about the dependencies of that particular dependency that rejected it, right? So a package A depends on a package B and C. So if a package A declines or refuses to get onto the system, does that make the packages B and C also being not being rewarded?
Okay.
Assuming that they're not being the B packages B and C are not dependencies of some other onboarded package, but if they're sole, if they're dependencies only of that
no, so
package
let me clarify this.
I understand it as
think about it as
not being
a matrix,
rewarded. Would that be correct?
Right? So T rank computes packages. The T rank computation occurs whether the packages are onboarded or not. So every package, whether its parents are onboarded or not, are going to get a T rank. Okay? And so the output of that goes to this matrix of, is package foo, is package foo onboarded? Yes, it is. Oh, it's 0x123 is the treasury address. Oh, cool. So it's got a T rank of 0.1. So we're going to distribute 0.1 T rank worth of rewards to that address. Whether the parent is registered or not. I see you wrote I see, so I'm guessing that answered your concern. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
yeah.
Thanks a lot for the
Otherwise,
explanation. It
you
makes
end up
sense
in a
now that
situation now where there's
they're
one
being
package that can hold
evaluated according.
that can hold
So yeah,
hundreds of thousands
everything's clear now.
back
Thanks.
by not being registered, and then it becomes pretty. It becomes like it definitely affects the utility of the system.
Yeah.
So no, that was definitely accounted for.
We don't want hostages, right?
That was definitely accounted for. Cool.
But on the other hand, wouldn't that be
Sorry, I don't know if it's
let's
just
say
me.
the
Sorry, I don't know if it's just me, but you're cutting in and out.
tendencies of
Okay.
Sorry.
Cool. Thank you. Sorry about that. It's just I want to make sure I hear like the question in its entirety.
Okay, I'll write it down.
It's easy to answer. While you type it in, just to take a moment and flag some of the changes or some of the alterations, if you will, from what we've described in the white paper versus what we're actually building. As you can imagine, as we wrote the white paper, we evaluated a variety of approach. But when we started building code and running simulations and the likes, there's a few things that we thought would either be suboptimal or impractical, or could be done better. So specifically, when we wrote the white paper, a lot of it described a system that would be built on a native layer 1, like its own native layer 1. Directionally now, we're looking at layer 2s. So that eliminates a lot of the complexity with regards to staking versus steeping that were described in the white paper, and how we needed to strike the right balance between securing the chain and securing the open source ecosystem. So that's one change that you'd be looking there. Second one was we described that when a package was registered, the package maintainer would receive an NFT, and whichever account held that NFT would be the account that receives the rewards. And so we started thinking about this some more, and as we dove into governance, we thought that it would be more appropriate to use a multi-sig. So when a package is registered, there is a multi-sig treasury that gets instantiated for that package. That multi-sig being controlled by the package maintainers with the quorum of their choosing. If it's 1, obviously it'd be a 1 and a 1, but if there's like 10 devs, they could say, for any disbursement, we're going to do a 6 out of 10 or 7 out of 10, whatever they feel comfortable with. The concern with the use of the NFT being that it is way harder to recover if that NFT gets lost. In the traditional crypto, that NFT being lost would mean the rewards are lost. And we obviously wanted to avoid that because it was pulling us too close to a pure Web3 experience with all the burden that comes with it, with the care and feed of the keys, for example. And so that's why we changed with a multi-sig, because now, well, you're going to have let's say you have 3 or 4 developers out there. if you put your quorum right, and obviously we'll make sure that there's proper checks and education and so on to help guide the package maintainers. But if Max and I both do a package and it's a 1 out of 2, and I lose my key, then he can go in and wipe my old key and create it and put a new one in. Or if it's a 3 out of 5 and someone loses their key, the other ones can help with the recovery as well. So we felt that type of an approach would not affect the security of the system, but would help with its resilience, would help handle corner cases around key loss, and also would be a better stepping stone towards governance and building or supplying the right governance tools for each individual package, and have them build their own each package to build their own individual DAO. So that gives us that stepping stone in the first iteration, to be augmented later on with more of a full-on DAO stack for each package maintainers to start creating their own governance. That make sense? Any questions on that? Cool. Questions on that or anything else? Actually, don't hesitate. All right, Tom, say a popular package like Ruby on Rails will not enter the system, even though dependencies of such package would be evaluated by the algorithm individually and would not be barred from being rewarded, but wouldn't that be a huge lost opportunity for its dependencies? So it wouldn't be a huge lost opportunity for its dependencies. There will be an incentive, so there will be a small loss for its dependencies. For its dependence, rather, to create an incentive for others to augment the network, like join the network. But it wouldn't be a lost opportunity for its dependencies, because the T rank, the distribution of tokens accounts for the registered T rank. So if you're distributing 100 tokens and you have 5 packages that are registered, even though they all depend on Ruby on Rails, for example, they each have their own T rank, and the distribution of these 100 tokens across the 5 packages will be a function of their own individual T rank. I'm not sure if I'm keeping the explanation as simple as it could be. I get the sense that we're starting to get into a little bit more of the specifics of the algorithm that we'll be describing in the T-Rank paper. But I hope it sort of addresses your questions, if not your concern, Tom, around the lost opportunity. If it doesn't, we'll definitely make sure that there's clarity in the T-Rank paper to address this. But what I'll say, to put it simply, is we've accounted for, and that was a key part of the tuning that took place on the T-Rank algorithm. But we accounted for a lot of those use cases, or a lot of those corner cases, if you will, to make sure that there isn't a disproportionate impact or disproportionate negative impact for packages that are doing the right thing and joining the network and being very active and maintaining their own code and promoting their own code, but they're not impacted by some dependency that has decided that they would simply not join the network. Okay, and to be clear as well, these type of corner cases, like the more you have that come to mind, as you have new corner cases that come to mind, please do share those with the team, because I look at this as methods to sort of validate the algorithm itself. Have we thought about all the different corner cases? Is the model bulletproof enough? Is the algorithm bulletproof enough? And ultimately, when it gets released on the testnet, everyone will be able to play with it, tinker with it, and try and fool it to get that maximum reward for minimum effort. We're definitely interested between now and then in hearing about those corner cases or hearing about those concerns as well, to make sure that as we communicate and as we continue to test and fine-tune the algorithm, those are taken into consideration. Is there a place one could find the edge cases being considered so far? Not publicly. I'll need to think about that, but I don't think we have something that's publicly consumable there. But definitely something we should write down as perhaps a supplement blog post to the T-Rank paper when that T-Rank paper comes out. And we're looking at this in the coming months for the T-Rank paper. With the summertime, we know that there'll be a little less attention to what's happening in the industry and people focusing a bit on getting some rest. Hopefully, we got to recharge those batteries to continue to build. But then we'll distribute the T-Rank paper. Yeah, definitely over the coming months, next couple of months. Right? Any other questions from anyone? I think we've covered sort of some of the components there. We have T-Rank is one. We have the T-Rank distribution. We've talked a bit about steeping as well. Bug reporting. So the intention there is to build a system that allows secure disclosure of vulnerabilities, and doing so with the right incentives associated with them. So package maintainers have the incentives to fix their own bugs. Developers who find the bugs or find the vulnerability have an incentive to disclose it effectively and confidentially, as well as put the right safeguards in the system to avoid anyone sort of creating a script that will file 10,000 bug reports an hour just to overwhelm a project. So how exactly this is going to work is currently an area that we're focused on. The rest sort of steeping, we're more experimenting with code now. T-Rank distribution, we have all the models built out as well. So we're looking at code, and the onboarding, same thing. We have all the models figured out, and we're experimenting with code. So that's sort of where we are.
Thanks so much, Thomas. And thanks so much for everyone asking questions. I thought that was a really good session. And we're also almost, closing in on that full hour. But I guess I just wanted to ask that question because maybe everyone else is too shy to ask it. And it's like the elephant in the room.
Yeah. So
do you have a rough
timeline, next steps?
Timeline.
So
that you can share with us
a testnet in Q4, so later this year.
What are the next steps?
And run that.
And what can we do as a community?
Months or so, and then launch the mainnet early next year. So that's currently where we're at. I'll be the first to admit that it's an aggressive schedule. There's a lot that needs to be built. but I would rather work with an aggressive schedule than no schedule at all. So we're definitely going to be pressing on, and we'll keep you updated on the progress that we make. So that's sort of where we're going next. In terms of how can the community help, questions like the ones you had today, potential like edge cases that you can think of, please do share those with us. To when the T-Rank paper comes out, definitely take a look at it. Think about ways to break it. We'd rather have someone break T-Rank in testnet than break T-Rank in mainnet. So any thought you can put to that would be great. And last, anything we haven't talked about today that any questions you have that may come to you tomorrow, over the weekend, whatever. Feel free to post them on Discord, and we'll make sure to answer those whenever we get the chance. Okay.
Cool. Next time we'll have another session on the latest and greatest updates of TCLI, GUI, and libT. And yeah, until then, thanks so much, and see you around in the Discord. I'll mute myself and then turn off this event. Thanks so much for participating.